Welcome to Viva La Visionary, the podcast that celebrates the innovative ideas and mindsets of entrepreneurs and visionaries. Join your host, Coach Bob Schittefeld, as he dives into inspiring stories and practical insights from trailblazers who are changing the game. Whether you're an aspiring entrepreneur or a seasoned leader, this show is your source for motivation and creativity. Let's embark on this exciting journey together.
Hey there, Coach Bob here. Welcome to Viva La Visionary, a podcast for visionaries celebrating and elevating. And we are interviewing amazing visionaries and getting their insights, and also people that work with and live with visionaries, because it's not an easy thing to do, is to either be a visionary, live with, or work with them. And so this morning, I'm happy to have Jonathan Dornbos. How are you, Jonathan?
Oh, thanks for having me.
Awesome. And Jonathan, we've known each other for a while, especially through the EOS community. And I know you are an amazing integrator. You coach and teach integrators, and you also have a role within EOS. So give me a little bit of a background. Who are you? What do you do? And we'll go from there.
Sure. Thanks for the intro and for having me here. I really appreciate it. So yeah,
Yep.
integrator coach and EOS worldwide, helping in a contract role. My whole thing started when I was working my first job out of college. I was working for an entrepreneur, and along that journey, he gave me the book Traction, which I'm sure you've heard that before. And the
Yep.
rest was history. Like I was the integrator for my last few years there, and then I made a few full-time transitions, and then now moved to a space where I'm helping a couple visionaries at the same time. And so that's really all I've ever known is small business and integrators. And for the last 10 years, just have really been soaking on continuing to learn and master how to be the best integrator I could possibly be. I feel like I'm always learning and always growing through that process. And the EOS worldwide engagement is all about community with integrators. So Rocket Fuel University has this community of integrators called the Integrator Mastery Forum. And so I get the pleasure of connecting with everybody and helping them be connected with each other and learning and just developing that community. So it's a total pleasure that I get to do that.
That's awesome. And I've known Gino for a long time. I've been a part of EOS since the beginning, and literally talked to him the day after his first Integrator Mastery Forum, probably 10 years ago. And he was so excited. He's like, this was one of the best days of my career because he got to teach and mold integrators, which again is what the key to unlocking the business potential, freeing up and elevating the visionary. And so it's so exciting. And I said, well, Gino, that's what I want to do with visionaries. He's like,
Mm.
have at it. I want nothing to do with that. And he's like, good luck. And that was really the beginning of the Visionary Forum. So, and again, I went to his second Integrator Mastery Forum, and that did help me to craft, how I visioned the Visionary Forum. And so, I love interviewing visionaries and getting their take, but I've also spent a lot of time working with integrators within EO, and I actually coached a few of the second in command forums that EO had, and they would just be like, how do you guys think? And how do I deal with them? And I'm like, it's not that difficult, but it's different for us visionaries and different for people working with us. And I like the phrase, we visionaries are the cause and cure of all of life's problems. So we create a lot of chaos, but we're also pretty good at creating calm out of chaos if we are in the right headspace, have the right team, have the right process. So to me, the integrator role is the worst role I could ever imagine, but I'm thankful that for you and other integrators, because that is not what I'm great at. So I just want to ask you a few questions, because you've worked with, I'm sure, many visionaries, and you've worked with many integrators that have worked for visionaries. So I love to get, there's three answers to all the questions: yours, mine, and the real one. And so me as a visionary, I'm like, they don't do what I say, and they don't listen, and they don't understand. And then the integrator and the rest of the team is like, he doesn't listen, he doesn't follow up, he says something different each time. So couple questions. First of all, if in your mind, is the role of the visionary?
Mm.
So a lot of visionaries are like, what am I supposed to do? Because I started this business, I sat in every seat, and then definitely hit a ceiling and realized and engaged in a business process. So then I started to figure out the accountability chart and delegate and elevate. But then a lot of times we visionaries are like, well, what do we do now? So what's your definition and or role of the visionary?
Yeah, that's great. So visionaries are the lifeblood, you're right, of small business. And I was looking at just information before we connected, and I'm like, what are the statistics? Like I know small business makes the world go round, and
Right.
in the US, it makes up 99.9% of businesses. Okay,
Wow.
yes. And
Huh.
then 44% of the US economy. So like I think the reason I'm saying that is because one, sometimes I think visionaries fall into this feeling of being put out to pasture when they get a support team around them, right? Instead of being this genius with a bunch of helpers, now they have this team that's leading the company and they're like, well, what's left for me? And anytime there's like, well, I'm not doing this thing anymore, there's just the natural
Right.
feeling of like, oh, it's not an increase thing, it's a decrease thing. So what's my value? What's my value? And I believe deep down, if you get talking with a vulnerable visionary, I'm curious if you would agree, like at the end of the day, they just want to feel valued and feel important and feel like they're helping and they want to see things happen. And so I think, that's the first thing that comes to mind is just visionaries matter so much. And so it's okay. It's okay to actually have time with your family. It's okay to have time and space on the calendar where you're not working. You don't have to always be working all of the time. And then to really lean into what am I going to show up like now for this business? How can I really support my integrator? How can I really support and affirm everybody on the leadership team? Because everybody really is showing up trying to do the best job that they possibly can. And so just even
Right.
an ounce of like, I know you've got this, Kathy, or, because this is what, you're awesome at this. So thanks for taking this for the team. Like those kind of words matter. So what is the role of the visionary? What new ideas are there? There are always new ideas. Some visionaries have 100 of them a day. Some may only have a few of them a day, but there's always new ideas. So researching and developing and thinking about those types of things. Creative problem solving is another key thing. Like we'll get in the weeds of all the details, right? As a leadership team, major function leaders, et cetera. And the visionary can look at everything from a unique perspective because of their past. Typically, they're the founders of the organization. They birthed it, right? And so they're like, well, I kind of think it's this, isn't it? This and this. And then suddenly light bulbs go off. And so that's
Right.
really like a huge, huge thing that they bring to problem solving within the organization, relationships with people outside of just the business itself, those key industry relationships, which then drives new ideas and partnerships and all of
Right.
that. And then culture, right? Culture is huge. How like that's kind of what I was talking about a little bit with supporting the team, but being a champion for the core values. Um, I could tell you a story. I'll save it probably for later, but a visionary integrator duo that I met just last week that just has this amazing story of how they're just driving culture and it's just exploded their business. It's just amazing.
That's awesome. Very cool. But and when you said a few things popped up for me. You're right. It's so visionaries, and this is my perception and not just stereotyping, but working with about 500 visionaries over the last 20 years, the common theme is we are we do wear our heart on our sleeves, and we are very dramatic, and everything's great. Oh my God, we're so screwed. And at the end of the day, as Dr. Doug Brackman talks about in Driven, there's 8% of us that have a different gene, and we just are wired a little bit differently. It's not better or worse, but also very emotional, and then have imposter syndrome. And so we are trying to prove ourselves. And so when we're in this survival mode, we really thrive, and we can handle stress more than most, but we can only handle stress for so long and or so much of it. But we do want to feel that we matter and to feel heard like all people do. And so I found that, for 20 years, I've been in every seat, and I've been putting out fires, and I've been the hero, and I kind of like being the hero. But at the end of the day, I can only sustain that for so long, and we can only grow so much to get to that ceiling. So you said a couple things like guilt, and then it's habit. I've been doing this for so long. We are an addictive personality, so
Mm,
I think that often we're addicted to rushing and survival mode, and it
mhm.
just feels weird. And I've had many of my clients that I've coached. They're like, I'm kind of worried. And the visionary would say this. I'm like, why? And they're like, it's going too smoothly. And I'm like, okay, that's not a bad thing. And so when people do put in a system and get an integrator and a team, it is different because it's like, I'm not used to this because I'm used to
Mhm.
having to be, what am I doing now? And, as opposed to, oh, and that is a huge evolution. And as Gino talks about, letting go of the vine and delegating and elevating, and a lot of visionaries have a hard time letting go of the vine because they don't know what their role is, what our role is. And so I went through that 25 years ago where I took a sabbatical for a couple months, had a personal issue that I had to deal with, got the permission from my team to leave for a couple months. They ran it better than ever. When I came back, they were like, welcome back, but we don't want you doing all the same shit. And I'm like, well, what do I do now? I literally had no idea. And they're like, well, what you're great at in love. And I'm like, well, what am I great at in love? And they're like,
Mm,
so good at meeting people. You're so good at asking questions. You're so good at seeing the problem and the solution. And then you're so good at selling it. Now, only sell what we're really good at. That's something to learn from. But and I realized it takes a year or two for the visionary to let go of the vine. And
mm,
again, if I don't know who I am or why I'm here or what I'm supposed to be doing, a lot of times I'm going to hold on to it. So then
yeah.
it's like, okay, well, if I'm really good at going to a conference and networking and seeing gaps in the industries or solutions or meeting these people, I'm like, well, that's easy. It's like, it's not a bad thing if something that I'm great at in love is easy for me. That's what Dan Sullivan calls unique ability. I call that great gift. But yeah, so I love what you're saying about that. And I love what you said about words matter. That's something when I talk about the 6 habits of a great effing visionary, it's to understand, to create a safe space and to understand the weight of our title and how much our words do matter. If I say, Jonathan, how come you didn't get this done? It's like, oh my God, that can crush people as opposed to leading and managing, to nurture, which I've had to learn how to do. So great stuff.
Mm,
I love that.
mm, mm. It's funny that you talk about the addictive nature of things too. There's a good becoming a mentor to me person that I know who was recently talking about a visionary that we're both very well acquainted with, and he's like, you need like an addiction withdrawal plan. Yes, exactly.
Well, it's interesting. I have a client when I was coaching them through EOS, and in the 2-day annual, the visionary was finally saying, "Okay, I'm ready to let go of the vine." And then we took a break, and then a couple of people on the leadership team are like, "She's not going to let go of the vine." I'm like, "Okay, a couple things here. A, if you say that, that's not going to help. B, if you don't do your job and get your rocks done, then she's not going to let go of the vine. And three or C, I don't know if I was doing alphabet or numbers. It's going to take a year or two, and there does take therapy, and that's what I'm doing now is coaching visionaries to realize, we don't have to do it all. We don't have to be the hero, and it is an addiction recovery plan. Interesting. Well,
Yeah,
cool.
well, and
Appreciate.
it just yeah, it just light bulbs are going off for me too.
Yeah,
Is
go
like
for it.
I've known about what you've done for a while, but like I sometimes I get imposter syndrome too, right? And as I'm working with tricky situations or I'm working with one visionary that's built this amazing company, and she's a unique she has a unique ability of both being this visionary but also has like a banking background. And so like she's been able to be in essence the integrator for years too, right? And has actually built a successful, 10 million plus company. And so when it comes to transitioning to an integrator, it's different. It's not like, hey, this is the stuff you're not good at, so let me have it. Like she's also good at those things, right? And so
Right.
I love the fact that there's something out there for visionaries because I want some of the imposter syndrome sometimes set in when I'm like, I want to be able to help mentor, coach, train, help to really unlock this visionary and free them. And that I don't know that that's my skill set either. I can be the integrator and I can do a really great job at that. We can have a really strong relationship, but there's to know that there's something more out there that I could actually say, hey, go check this thing out. That's really encouraging.
Well, thanks. And I've been a part of Gino's life and world for 25 years, and very involved with EOS. I signed up his first client for him. I was his third client, and so EOS is near and dear to my heart. Gino saved my life in a lot of ways because I just thought I'm not meant for business. I'm a salesperson, and he helped me to realize that I'm a visionary and that structure is not a bad thing. And I'm like, screw structure, man. I like winging it, and I'm good at my intuition. He's like, that's
Hmm.
fine, but it's got to be within a structure. And I realized, and it was proven, that if it's structure around what matters most and who matters most, it's a good thing, because then inside that space, there's room for creativity and intuition and magic and whatnot. And so, so for as I was going through this, and then I felt like I was alone, and I found other visionaries were struggling too. Just as Gino looked at the basics of business and the main issues that small business owners and small businesses go through, it's the same thing for visionaries. We're going through a lot of the same shit. So that's where, the Visionary Forum and the Visionary Summit and the Mountain Retreat, and even Unscatter the Chatter, my book, which is a life operating system, we wrote that for me to understand that if I put a little structure and a little process around my life, it's actually a lot more fun and a lot more freeing. And then to have a peer group of other people going, yeah, I get it. So again, what you've done and you're a part of with the integrators, because it's very lonely to be an integrator. And it's so hard and different. And if they can learn from each other, that's amazing. And that's what we've created at the forum. So I appreciate that. And, again, I'm excited. I was an implementer for 9.5 years, loved it. I love EOS. And now I feel like I'm doing more for the entrepreneurial community and the EOS community when I'm supporting the visionaries. Because, again, we're a different breed. So appreciate that. So to shift gears a little bit, what do you feel like, what is an amazing example of a visionary overcoming an obstacle that you could share that would be, boy, when he or she did this or did that you found was an amazing breakthrough that either helped them to delegate or elevate or become a better leader? Is there anything that comes to mind around that?
That's a good question. I think that there's it is a journey. And so as I'm in it day to day, sometimes I can see the gaps more than I see the gains. And then the team reminds me, oh no, this is getting a lot better. I'm like, oh, good. Because I see the end goal
Right.
and I'm like, there's still a ways there. Um,
Right.
yeah, I think I think there's just an aha. One thing that comes to mind is just an aha effect when we get the visionary just in the visionary seat. Because oftentimes visionaries are sitting in more than one seat, sometimes three
Yep.
or more. And it's just because you've hired somebody for that seat doesn't mean that the visionary isn't still very involved with that function, because they may have to do a lot of training, and then at their seasonality of the business, some things don't come up for a while. And so it just takes time still. But just
Right.
officially having the right people in those seats and saying, hey, you're just in the visionary seat. Now this is different and this is better. And so I think that's usually an aha celebration moment.
I love that. And I think that is the single best answer. Not the best, but a great answer. And I've realized that even more. A couple of my clients recently asked me, like within 2 days, hey, Coach Bob, what is the biggest thing we can do for growth? Is it marketing? Is it another salesperson? Is it this? And these teams have been running on EOS in a couple of years, and they had a visionary in the making. I mean, that it was still doing too many things. They have a great integrator. They figured out the foundational tools of EOS, and they're starting to really get it together. And what came to me, and I realized that it's to get the visionary in the seat and only that seat.
Hmm.
And again, I think part of the issue is I'm like, but what do I do all day? And what value am I giving? Because I used to be the first one in, the last one out. I would be the hero. I would jump in and I would, put my magic on everything. And the reality is I'm in the way. So I think your answer is spot on, is to understand that if I have time to be the visionary and it's like nothing on my calendar for the day, I literally will schedule time for a clarity break, and I will schedule time on a research project or with a client or with a vendor. When I first started to really step in the visionary seat 24 years ago in my first business, I'm like, what do I do? And my team is like, go play with your clients. I'm like, well, what does that mean? They're like, well, take them to a game, take them sailing. With one of my clients, he loved us, but when I would want to go meet with him, he's like, I don't really have time. And Bob, you guys are great. No worries. And I'm like, Robert, this was his name. I said, what can I do with you? I'm supposed to do, I actually had a rock. I know visionaries don't. It's one of the rocks I actually did well. That I said, I have to get with 7 clients that are in my target market or prospects and spend a half a day with them outside of the office. And he's like, huh. He's like, actually, I need to get more flying time to keep my pilot's license intact, and I don't like heights. I'm like, okay. He's like, well, let's go flying. I'm like, okay. So literally we flew up north, hung out, played a round of golf, flew home where we could have played golf here. We got so much accomplished, and it's just the two of us sitting in the plane with headphones, and I'm holding on. But it was great. It was spending time with them. And even with that client, I was like, so do you have like a board of directors? Or he's like, you're one of them. And I was just his vendor, but I was a visionary vendor that spent time with him. And again, asked him great questions. He came up with so many solutions. I ended up getting more business out of it as well. So it's an interesting thing. So yeah, I think just get in the visionary seat and get out of the way. And again, it's a art and a science for, it's not about, okay, leave for 6 months. It's spend time as the visionary, but be available when needed. But don't
Yes.
go and interrupt, which I used to do often.
Yeah, yeah.
That's a
Which
great.
I have a good question for you on that, but
Yeah, please.
I can okay, two
No, go
actually,
for it. Go for
and
it.
a thought as well. Okay, so I love that, and I'm sure that when you did it, there probably was a little bit of like, "Ooh, this feels wrong" or naughty. The fact that I get
I'm
to
not
do
earning my
this,
keep. Right.
right?
Right. Right.
Exactly. But yet you're just, I think in the book Traction itself, right? Gino Wickman talks about clarity breaks and how like you need so many people don't take the time to think, and that's such a
Yep.
like it took me years to actually accept that and make it happen, and like so much good comes out of that, and in a way there's some alignment with what you're doing there and clarity breaks and all of that, but um okay, so I'm all over the place trying to focus my thoughts. The other thing I was thinking about with visionaries is, in addition to that, right, we talk about culture and driving that. And I've had some great experiences with some wonderful visionaries who, when we came into town to do our annual, they were so intentional of making sure that we had a fun plan, team health fun, right? And so this was a New York City based organization with a lot of remote workers, but we all flew into the city and then we took the train out and drove out to Southampton, and that's where we stayed for the time out there, which was just wonderful. And then we drove up to Sag Harbor, and they took us out on a boat cruise to just have fun, have drinks and eats, and it just created such, it's to this day the most fun I think I've ever had, with a team of leaders, just doing something
Right.
so fun, and then like welcome baskets. Like, here's a handwritten card from the visionary. Thank you so much for being here. We value you, and we're so looking forward to planning with you. And here's some goodies to just help you enjoy your stay. Like, that took time, it took effort, and even if you just have an assistant do all that work and you sign the card, it still matters, right? I just think like what that time and space that you get on your calendar as a visionary to be able to say, hey, what if I spent time calling everybody in the company today, one on one, and just left them,
Yep.
connected with them and told them how much I value them and give an example of something, so it's meaningful. It's not just like you're awesome, like that kind of work. Just it makes an employee's week to be able to do that
Yep.
stuff. So um,
Agreed.
I'm curious to know. My question that I had was around, getting into that visionary seat and no longer being in the other seats and being a resource and a mentor for people, and that transition of like, well, I'm training the person in this new role. And how do you how have you seen visionaries successfully go from, I'm in the role, now I'm training and mentoring somebody else in the role. So yeah, my integrator is like leading and managing that person, but I'm still unloading all of the knowledge and experience that I have in that role. To then
Right.
drawing a line too. Now I'm the mentor, and I'm no longer doing any more training, any more like any of the stuff that falls into the LMA area and lets that person feel like there's two bosses.
Right. So a couple things. One, again, you doubling down on EOS. And again, it is hard to say, hey, you can't talk to me. You have to go to your boss. And it's like, but I've been coming to you for years, which is hard for the visionary and for the employee who was with them since the beginning. So what I learned is it took some time. And the fact that EOS, one of the things I love about it is the leadership understands it, but also it's so simple. And what the heck is EOS? Where then the employees understand it. So we would even tell everybody. So I had one thing that I used to do twice a year. I would go visit all of our managers and the people below them. So it was about 25 people twice a year, and I would spend a couple hours with each one of them. And we were very clear to say, Bob is going to come and hang with you and have a conversation with you, but don't do anything he says. It's a conversation. And then it was, Bob, you can't tell him what to do, because I would get in trouble if you said, what do you think of this? And the integrator was between you and I on the accountability chart. And I'm like, that sounds great. And then all of a sudden it's like they go do it. And they're like, Bob, why did you tell them to do it? I said, I didn't tell them. So it was training for me and the company to say, yeah, you can come to me because I'm a good problem solver. But then it would be like, okay, I'm going to, and it was also to ask more questions rather, the question to statement ratio. That was a great learning lesson
Mm,
for me, is instead of saying, here's what you should do, Jonathan, to say, well, what would you do? And to just be that mentor to ask questions, and then to say, hey, think it through, take it to your boss with a
mhm,
simple plan, and if you buy in, go and pitch it to them. Do not think so when I would go through the whole company, I would say, so Jonathan, what do you do all day? Well, I do this, this, and this. Well, why do you do it that way? Well, that's the way I was taught to do it. Well, how would you do it? And again, don't change anything, but how, well, I would do it this way, and this way. It's like, have you brought that up to your team and your boss? It's like, well, no. It's like, okay, so what, so take ownership. And again, don't, do it without going through. And again, with the structure of EOS, it can definitely be too rigid and it can also be too loose. So it's that art and the science of
mhm,
having
mhm.
them think for themselves, but to own it. And that's when the company takes off, is when the leadership team starts to own it and ask questions, but not just go rogue. And then they're leading and mentoring and driving accountability and managing the people below them. That's when it's magic.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if I'm answering your question, but again, that's part of letting go of the mind, because this is when they feel out to pasture is, Jonathan, you can't talk to me, or I'm going to go to
Yeah.
Arizona for two months and not be. No, it's still, we lose the magic when I leave. So that's where it takes some time. Self-implementing is great, and that's where I love having an implementer, a coach, a mentor to say, Bob, you can't do that. Or, yeah, go talk to Jonathan, take him out to lunch, and be very clear to say, I'm a sounding board for you. This is a confidential conversation. If you have an idea or a concern, thank you very much. But who can you take that to? And have a plan. So when we talk about IDSing, it's not just, hey, Jonathan, there's an issue. It's like, okay, here's an issue. Here's what I think the real issue is. And here's a couple potential solutions, but I just wanted to get your buy-in or thoughts. So not just, complaining. So anyways, I don't know if I
Yeah.
answered your question, but
No, yeah, that's yes, you did, and that's helpful. And I love the very intentional, probably felt like over communicating over and over again. Like, don't do anything with this. I just wanted to share my ideas with you. Go take it to your boss. Like, it takes that level of intentionality. Otherwise, people just assume based on your position, again, like you were saying, like, oh, Bob told me to do this. No, 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 no,
right.
that's not what I
Right.
intended.
And Colby helped us with that. We hired a Colby person just for, the 2 hour session. It was $500 or whatever. And the best money we ever spent, because then they would, the consultant would say, so Amy, who runs customer service, who's high fact find, high follow through, low quick start, does Bob ever come in to brainstorm? And everyone laughs. I'm like, what? And then I'm like, why can't I do that? And they're like, okay, so if Amy is focused and you interrupt her, it literally messes with her. And she's going to be like, okay, do we have all the facts and who's going to do what? I said, we're brainstorming. So what I learned also is to say, hey, Amy, do you have time in the next day or two for us to brainstorm for a half hour? And often it was like, yeah, can you give me 2 hours? Or it wasn't, give me a month. And when I would come in, I would be very clear to say, I'm not asking you to do anything. I'm just throwing it out there as an idea because it's up here. And then if you think it's worthwhile, let's see what's next. And what's interesting is I learned that even with my wife in my personal life, she would get flustered when I'm like, hey, what if we go spend a month in Colorado? And she was like, whoa. And I'd be like, okay, let's just have a conversation. You don't have to do anything. And it's just a conversation. But again, if someone's high fact find, high follow through, they're like, okay, hold on. So that was a learning curve as well, is because I'm not just a visionary in my business, I'm a visionary in life. So
Mhm,
not only EOS and Colby and Working
mhm,
Genius and other things helped me in my business, but it's helped me with my wife and my kids and my friends. That's interesting. You
mhm,
brought up one other point, and then I have one final question for you. But when you talked about fun with your client, I think that is one of the biggest things, that I have fun creating and figuring stuff out. And then when I have so much structure, it gets boring. And
Mm.
so then, so it's what's the Shining? All work and no play makes Johnny a dull boy. So fun to me is one of the greatest trust building, team building things. And so part of our role as the visionary is to create fun. And if I'm not having fun, I am not fun to work with. And I get in the way and I micromanage. And so I think to keep it loose and let our freak flag fly and to be light, because when I'm in the business, I'm not having fun. When I'm on the business, it's like it's going to be okay. Yeah, Jonathan was pissed as a client or as an employee. It's like everything's going to be fine, but what can we do? And let's have more fun rather than we have so much to do. Most of the clients that came to me are like, I love this company and I'm so stressed out. And it's like, okay, there's real issues, but how can we also have fun doing it? And again, there's a balance of fun and productivity. And to be honest, the more fun I'm having and the more trust I'm building, then the more productive I am and we are. So I appreciate the fun comment.
Yeah, just goes right back to headspace, right? Like, yeah,
Yeah. Well, a healer of mine out in Colorado explained that survival mode, like with an animal, they're breathing through their mouths. It's where am I going to get my next meal and who's trying to kill me? And that is, living second by second. And that's the way a lot of us, when we're stressed, are breathing and thinking and feeling. And as we implement a system and knock out the issues that keep reoccurring and hire the right people and step into our genius and our unique ability and great gift, then we start to be in the business. And then it's, and
yeah,
even like yoga's been a great thing for me because that's when I started to learn how calming it was to my nervous system to actually breathe through my nose and not be in survival mode. Survival mode's
yeah,
not fun, and it comes and goes, but interesting. So,
yeah.
final question. I know you've heard me use the phrase Viva La Visionary and how that came about. And I want to ask what your thoughts are on that. But I feel like, and actually, as I've been coaching more visionaries and we have the Visionary Forum and the visionaries are starting to step into who we are and just to be ourselves, then someone said, Viva La Visionary. I'm like, well, what do you mean? It's like, it's celebrating who we are. And that's for ourselves and for the company. And I don't know if you've heard my talk, The 6 Habits of a Great Effing Visionary. One of them is to celebrate and elevate the visionary. So it's not all about us, but it's like Bob is really good at this and he's not good at that. And let's use him, and what he's great at and what he loves. And so it's interesting that people who are, coaches within EOS and implementers are like, thank you for doing the Visionary Forum because visionaries matter too. And again, it's a fine line. It's not all about me as a person, as the visionary, but it's me being in my role and my great gift, you as the integrator being used, the salesperson, and it's magic when we're all in that. So I just wanted to know, does Viva La Visionary, what does that mean to you, or if anything?
Yeah, no, that's great. I have to chuckle at myself because I had to Google it. Well, okay, what does it mean? I'm an eight fact finder, so let me understand it for sure. Make sure I don't just go with my gut. Anyway, so I came up with long live and live life. And I think both of those actually make a huge impact and matter. So I like that there's kind of this two messages with that, right? Kind of what I was saying earlier, without visionaries, then we wouldn't have small business. And quite clearly, small business makes up what, 44% of the US economy. Like that matters,
Right.
right? So the fact that there was an idea, and like you said, worst enemy, best, it's a double-edged sword, right? Visionaries are wonderful and they also kind of get in their own way, right? And so that's where the integrator comes in to help with that. But I think it is important to like just make sure that visionaries know that they are important and that we need more and more visionaries to keep growing small business because that's just the lifeblood of our economy. And
Hmm.
to live life, right? Like we talk about the EOS life, you can talk about all these things, your family. Don't spend your whole time head down in your computer or at the office where you don't see your family, and pursue other passions because then you get out of that creative headspace and you get more back into that animal instinct that you were describing, and the fun element just is gone, right? I like the phrase visionary freer. That's something we talk about at Rocket Fuel University. Like, it's not the job of the integrator to come in and control that visionary. No, it's about freeing them to be their true selves and capturing and harnessing all of the positive things that, yes, of course, and tapering the stuff that's less helpful, but that's just that relationship. So yeah, I love it. I think it's perfect.
So thank you for that. And my final thought, which really resonates, and I love the long live the visionary and live life. And that's where in my first business, I was in survival mode. And as I started to develop the team and we started to implement EOS, I literally, and I can remember the day that my nose came above the waterline, and it was like, oh my gosh, okay. And then I started to see more clearly and have clarity and realize we're going to be okay. And I get chills. So that was an amazing experience. And then I started to live my life and spend time with my significant other and to look at my health and my spirit. And as I started to do that, and again, it's not all about me, I started to help my leadership team to live life too. And to say, how come you're still working here? Go home with your family. Well, I have so much to
Yes.
do. It's like, and that I
Yes.
help them to delegate to someone else. And then as then my leadership team got their head above water, and again, now it's okay, we're not going to die. And then my leadership team started to bring their team up, and it was an amazing thing. I think there's a book in there somewhere. So thank you for bringing that up. But
Yeah, I love that. Somebody I just was talking with, that's an integrator for a company in Grand Rapids, last week. One of the takeaways we did a Grand Rapids meetup, was that the leader goes first. And so when I was thinking about your earlier statement about always being the first person and then the last person out, right? Like you can't you can't expect that anybody in the organization is going to take your comments seriously about making sure that you're spending time with your family, and make sure that you don't have to work late if you're working late every single night,
right,
right? Like you have
right.
to pave the way, and then so people are watching you as the visionary, and then it kind of everything, the magic starts to happen if you can get to that point. So, and not everybody does.
Awesome. Well, this was fantastic, Jonathan. I appreciate your wisdom and your time. I'm speaking at the next conference. They asked me to come back, and it's going to be around living life beyond the vine. And it is Viva La Visionary, and it's helping visionaries to realize we're not alone. Life can be fun. Again, we love to have fun, and so, but it's just also to me, it's about figuring out my life. So what is my why as a person? What is my great gift or unique ability? And why am I here? And as visionaries start to realize that, and they're working on their life and on their business, it's amazing because it's counterintuitive. It's like, wait a minute, if I'm less stressed and happier and working less, we're more productive. That doesn't make sense, but it
Yeah.
does. It does work. So, well,
Yeah.
cool. Well, I appreciate your time, Jonathan, and we will talk soon. Have a great day.
Yes. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for tuning in to Viva La Visionary. We hope you enjoyed today's episode and found inspiration in our guest stories. If you loved what you heard, please subscribe, rate, and share the podcast with fellow dreamers and doers. Join us next time as we continue to explore the limitless possibilities of visionary thinking. Until then, keep dreaming big and taking action. Your vision matters.